And that piece of music was actually connecting me with Flanders Fields. It was interesting. Did anyone get a copy from the VFW this week? Yeah. It's been years since I've been where poppies were being available, so it's nice. Does anyone know what the poppy's about? Some of you do? Good. Okay, so for those of you who don't, the end of World War I, almost 100 years ago, was the greatest sigh of relief throughout the Western world, because so many lives had been given up in such horrid ways. And there was this one battlefield that was turned into a major cemetery, and there were a lot of unmarked graves there, and so they planted a field of poppies. Flanders Field is a field of poppies. And so poppies is the way we remember the horrors and the wonders and the gifts that happened in World War I. One of the things that I learned along the way doing the work in the ministry and putting together the books that I've written about New Thought and metaphysics is that the prayer that is identified with unity was written for the people going over to Europe to fight in World War I. And it was written, and people would put them, hand them to the soldiers as they were going, and they would tuck them in their hats, in their covers as they were headed out. And the prayer is a very simple one. Some of you have heard it in other contexts, and I have to tell you a little story. I helped to found the Unitarians in Grants Pass, and I was known as the Unitarian minister there. And I got a call one day, and so it was from one of the memorial homes, and they said, we've got someone here, and they want the Unitarian prayer. And I'm happy to show up. I have no idea what you're talking about. And I showed up, and it turned out what they wanted was this. The light of God surrounds you. The love of God enfolds you. The power of God protects you. The presence of God watches over you, and all is well. Well, it turns out that every town that had a unity center in it that sent their boys over for World War I had every one of their boys return.
Wow.
Now that's a blessing. When we feel that connection with something greater than us, we are altered. Our consciousness shifts, and it turns out all kinds of fun things happen in the body. And I began to get interested in this work when I discovered that at McGill University in the 50s, they would bring in people who were known as faith healers, spiritual healers. They didn't call them energy healers then. And they would have them hold seeds. And then they would sprout, controlled experiment. They would sprout seeds that had been held and sprout seeds that hadn't been. And all the ones that had been held did better in a double-blind controlled experiment. That was kind of cool. And I'm sure many of you are aware of something called The Secret Life of Plants. Yeah. Right? And is it really possible that a plant knows what I'm thinking and feeling? Well, if a plant knows, what do you think the people around me know? It turns out at the Institute of Noetic Sciences that they have found that simply gazing at someone through an electronic medium, a computer screen or a photograph that's being projected, shifts, if one does so with a positive attitude, it shifts the chemistry of the person you're looking at. Not in the same room, not saying a thing to each other. The only connection is looking at the other person on the screen. And their body gets more harmonious. The heart evens out, the blood pressure evens out, various systems line themselves up into greater harmony when someone simply looks at an image of us with positive thoughts. Wow. That's a blessing. And if we look at the research that was done in San Francisco, at the University of San Francisco Hospital there, we learned that when people pray for heart patients, those heart patients have fewer issues, heal faster, etc. And so there have, since that series of experiments in the 80s, there have been over 2,000 replications of that series of experiments. Some of them are not so well done. About 200 are not so well done. But 1,800 pretty good experiments. And every single one of them, it didn't matter whether the people involved believed in God, believed in prayer, believed in anything at all, but if they were held in positive regard by someone who knew their first name, their healing was enhanced. Isn't that interesting? That's a blessing. So, I wanted to understand how that worked. I have an inquisitive mind. And I began to look at some of the processes, and theories around the world, around energy and around bodies and around the nature of the bodies. And I started talking about some of this, and a Tibetan, or an American who had studied with Tibetans for 35 years, found me and he said, we need to write a book. And it came out called Calm Healing. And what we did was we integrated a combination of meditation techniques and metaphysical approaches to healing from Tibet with Western science. And then we reissued it about 10 years later as Empowered Care. And this book was an opportunity for me to sit down and go, okay, what do we know about living systems? Because plants and people are living systems. The whole planet is, which is kind of marvelous. Because once you begin to understand what a living system is and how it works, then everything begins to go, oh yeah, I can live with it. So one of the characteristics of living systems is that we tend to start out very small and grow very, very slowly. I'll do it from your side. We grow very, very slowly, and then suddenly we start growing very, very fast, and then we slow down again. The classic S-curve of living systems. And it turns out that at there are some critical junctures along the way. And we tend to slow down at the point where there's a limit. Either the limit is outside, environmental, or it's inside. There's only so much so much bone the body can generate to deal with the gravity and the air pressure on the planet, okay, for example. So we have these things that happen in living systems, a variety of wonderful things, and it turns out that most of them happen without any biochemical signal. Have you ever contemplated, have you ever watched the ice skating in the Olympics or the World Ice Skating? They're amazing, aren't they? You almost can't see how fast they're turning when they're turning, right? The spins and then they come down. How do they do that? Well, I have to tell you, they are moving faster than any nerve signal can go in the body. Okay? They're going faster. Decisions and choices are happening in their body faster than a signal can go from the brain to the muscle. So something's happening here that isn't about biochemistry or electricity. There's another thing. Have you ever thought about how it is, you got cells, we've got cells. Skin cells are pretty much all alike. How is it that these guys are straight, but these guys are curved? They're identical cells. What is it that causes those cells to curve over? It's not a biochemical signal. It's not an electrical signal. What is going on here? Well, it turns out that we think we are stuff. We think we are cells. But what we are is fields. electromagnetic sort of, some of them can't be measured with electromagnetic scales, of fields. And these fields are holes. The technical term is a Bose-Einstein condensate. I love it. And they engage in mutual deviation amplification. But isn't that fun? I love the jargon. But these fields exist prior to our growth into the form, and they continue to exist after we have grown into the form. And in fact, someone recently, just in the last few months, has been able to photograph a salamander field around the embryo. So you can see the embryo, and then you can see the shape of the grown salamander that the embryo is going to become. Isn't that marvelous? Yeah. So if what we are and how we act and shift and change is because of fields, is fields, then we have to kind of put aside our notion that it's about the words we say, the acts we do, the food we eat, the sleep we get, whatever, that determines what's going on with our being. Oh my. That's a lifetime of learning I have to put aside. I don't know about you, but I've been tracking all that stuff all my life because, well, everyone said I needed to. So if we start thinking about the body as fields, we realize, and we can go to various studies. There's a place called the Institute of Heart Math, which loves this business, like Heart Math Institute. And they'll do a number of things. And it turns out that the electromagnetic fields are generated by the body. The heart beats and has an electromagnetic signal, and there is a heart field around the body. And the lungs breathe, and they have electromagnetic interactions, and they send out a lung field around the body. Heart is usually about 6 or 8 inches, lung is usually about 18 inches. And other activities that are going on that we have send out, create another field around the body that all can be measured electromagnetically. And if you affect any one of those fields with electromagnetics, you can shift the way the heart or the lungs or the other parts of the body are functioning. That's very interesting. That's part of why people are concerned about carrying cell phones in the various places we carry cell phones, because we could be affecting those electromagnetic fields. But those fields are not the field that the salamander is growing into, because you can't measure it electromagnetically. Isn't that interesting? The only way he could get a photograph of it was because he was using the photon, a context in which the photons were willing to dance around the field. Does that make sense? No. Oh, good. Kind of like the filings around a magnet, right? They're dancing around the magnetic field, right? Well, it's the photons dancing around the salamander's field. And then he could say, look at that, there's something that is pre-existing the form that this being is going to become. There is something that says, okay, finger, time to curve. Okay, arm, time to end. Right? Oh my goodness. The name of that is a morphogenic field. And that was hypothesized in the 1920s. So we're talking about a 100-year-old theory that most of us have never heard. And a morphogenic field is the field that they were hypothesizing the form grows into. And it's not measured in electromagnetic scale than anything we have to measure with. It may be possible that there's things beyond what we have to measure with. And it is profoundly influenced by emotions and feelings. It expands or contracts. It is modified. The field can actually be modified by consistent presence of negative or positive emotions. So all of a sudden, what we are feeling becomes far more important than what we are doing. I love how happy everyone is here, because that happiness is enhancing the field that you are, and permits more happiness and more joy. In the New Thought world, the world of unity where that prayer came from, the world of science of mind, one of the things that they've come to understand just out of experience and many practiced experiments is that that which we focus on, we get more of. And that which we appreciate and have positive feelings about, we get a whole lot more of. But whatever we are focusing on, whatever stories we're telling ourselves about the nature of our lives, the nature of the world, the nature of people around us, that's what we will generally experience, is what the New Thought people have learned. We haven't got scientific experiments yet just to find out, but it has 150 years of people saying this is what I'm trying and this is what's working. So I'm going to kind of buy into that for a while. It's a good working hypothesis, all right? So now what I have is a field of being that is affected by feelings, and I get to choose. All right, so what does all that got to do with blessings? When I started putting this talk together, I did what we all do. I went online, and I began to collect blessings. And I also did some word stuff, because you know I like words, right? So in English, the word blessing is usually, if you're reading the Bible or something else, a translation of a Latin word, benedictere, okay, or benedictum or benedicta, which means to speak well of. That's all it means, to speak well of. All right, we're getting a link. Appreciation, good feelings, speak well of. I think I'm getting there, all right? And it turns out that when they were translating from the Latin into the English, there was no single word that worked. So I went, let's see what's going on here. And I also went to my Strong's Concordance. Now, if you don't know about Strong's Concordance, it's a marvelous thing. You open the Bible, you see a word, you open Strong's, you look up the word, and it says what Hebrew word or what Greek word that was in the original. Isn't that nice? So everywhere in the Old Testament where we see bless or blessing, it's Baruch, Baruchah, right? Which actually means to speak well of. It means to exalt, to respect, to honor, to appreciate. Oh my. Now, if we go to how English went from benedicta and barucha to blessing, it comes through the German. And I didn't make a note, I should have, of the actual German word, but it's on the order of blüchte. And maybe one of you folks who speak German can help me find the actual word. And it turns out that it comes from a pagan process that was in place throughout the Germanic and Saxon countries of the time of the 900s through 1200s. And the first use of the word blessing was about 1200 AD, which is marvelous, because that's when St. Francis wrote his books, his prayers about blessing. So we have this marvelous, and that was in Italian. So we have these marvelous coming togethers of an awareness in our culture of the power of something in the Christian tradition that had been being done in the pagan tradition that was something beyond speaking well of. It was somehow to consciously generate that good feeling in the field. That's what the pagans had been doing. So the Christians were speaking well, saying, you know, they were actually using the Hebrew, the original Hebrew blessing, you know, may the Lord God shine upon you, may his face be bright, you know, may you feel his presence, all that kind of thing. And then they would, you know, say in the name of, and they would be hoping that it would make a difference. whereas the pagans actually had rituals that caused them to feel the difference. Okay? Now, if you happen to be in a Christian environment that they felt things, you got it. But most of them were very verbal at that time. They weren't about feeling. So what would happen is people would go to their pagan experience for the feeling, and then they go to church for the words. And that's why, in our time, blessing is no longer acceptable. How many of you say grace before meals? Yeah, a few of you understand about blessing. Okay? If someone with a positive intention can affect another person's field and body, if someone who understands the nature of loving energy and has a positive intention can affect how a seed becomes a sprout and becomes a plant, it makes very good sense to understand that we affect everything that we focus our attention on. Blessing our food, blessing our fields. There actually is an official time, we're a little past it right now, it's usually 6 weeks after Easter, called rogations in the Catholic Church, which is blessing the fields, blessing the rain, saying thank you for being here, thank you for growing our food, thank you for being in harmony with our needs, thank you, we so appreciate you, we honor you, and we appreciate the gifts that you are giving us. We can plant, but only nature, the source, the fundamental beingness of all, can grow. We can do the things that the body needs, but only that inner nature, that field that we are, can heal the body. So to bless is to honor and appreciate that there is an energy, a force, a life, a livingness in all living systems that we can count on as we experience that loving, positive regard. Thank you very much.